Good day, everyone. Today we're going to talk about situational context. So, what is situational context? So, situational context describes the reason why something is occurring and the appropriate behavior and actions associated with the situation. So, it is one of the type of context that influence communication. So, situational context influence the communication. So, context is the situation, circumstances, or the specific settings in which an event occurs. So it means that the context or the situational context is something that influence the communication. So like situation, so situation can influence the communication, the circumstances, or specific settings. So typically used in regards to communication. The situational context of speech influences what is considered socially appropriate and how the message is received. So the situational context is defined by the event itself. You communicate differently in different settings. So that is very common. So we communicate differently in different settings. For example, think about how you talk in class, at a party, playing sports, and at a funeral. You use different types and styles of communication in all of these settings. Imagine if a person used the same type of speech they did while playing an intense sports game at a funeral. So this would not be appropriate at all. The situational context of these settings and scenarios both lead to differing types of communication. So it means that the example here given that how the situation may affect the communication. So for example, if you are in a funeral, so it is not a wise choice to talk about sports or party in a funeral because it would be disrespectful for the family there. So the advantages and disadvantages. So advantages: a situational context permits presentation of a wide range of language items. So the situation serves as a means of contextualizing the language, and this help clarify its meaning. So the situation serve as a means of contextualizing the language and this help clarify its meaning. At the same time, the generated example provided the learners with data for induction of the rules of forms, and students can be involved in the development of the presentation as well as in involving the grammar problem. This make it less dry than a traditional grammar explanation. Moreover, the situation, if well chosen, is likely to be more memorable than a simple explanation. So, all of this factor suggests that this approach rates high in efficacy. Disadvantages of a social context: if students are in the wrong mindset, they are unlikely to do the kind of cognitive work involved in the induction grammar rules. This kind of presentation also takes more time than explanation. Time spent presenting language is inevitably time spent at the expense of language practice, and it is arguable that what most of the student need is not the presentation of rules but opportunity to practice them. Thus, the generative situation loses point in terms of its economy, and it also requires a resourceful teacher who not only is able to conjure up situations that generate several structurally identical sentences, but who has also the means and the time to prepare necessary visual aids. So we have here an example. So example teaching should have done using generative situation. Step one is by a means of a picture on the board, a drawing, photo picture. The teacher introduces a character she calls Andy. She draw a rough map of Australia. So Australia is a deserted place. So placing next to it a picture of four-wheel drive vehicle. So she elicit ideas to how these pictures are connected. Establishing the situation that Andy has decided to drive across Australian desert from the east to west. So she elicit the sort of preparation a person would need to make for such a journey. So students suggest, for example, that Andy would need a map, a spare wheel, lot of water, a traveling companion, food, a first aid kit, and so on. The to do this kind of journey, you should Here we have the list: take a map, uh, take water, not travel alone. So step two, the teacher then explained Andy made no preparation. So he make a situation or a scenario. So the teacher made a situation or a scenario that Andy didn't made any preparation. So he didn't take map, he didn't take water, he didn't take anything. So using their ideas as well as her own, she construct the following story. So she construct the following story. Andy set off, got lost, got very thirsty, set off in search of help, leaving his vehicle, got trapped by a sudden flood waters, etc. The police set out and reached in search of him but couldn't find him because he had abandoned his vehicles and left no note. The teacher checked these facts by asking one or two students to recount them. So the teacher asked the class, "Well, what do you think of Andy?" So eliciting answer, he was stupid. Teacher would ask why. At this point, the student may venture sentences like he must take map. So from the situation given and from the teacher's illicit ideas, he was able to get the student communicate or response to her uh, the scenario we have created and create their own sentences. So he must take a map, having thus established the idea of disapproval of past actions. The teacher models the sentence, he should have taken a map, repeating it two or three times. The student repeat the sentence in unison and then individually. The teacher reminds the student of the concept of disapproval by asking, did he take a map? So a concept of disapproval. So he asked them a question. So did he take a map? So the response would be no. Was that a good idea? No. And so on the student respond, he should have had taken a map. So she then repeat this process using the example of traveling alone, eliciting, modeling, drilling, and concept checking the sentence. He shouldn't have traveled alone. He should have taken a water. He should have left his car. At strategic point, the teacher recaps the sentences that have been generated using the word on the board as prompts. So far, nothing has been written on the board. So step 4, the teacher then clears the board and writes up the following table. He, first column, and then a second column, should have and should have, and then taken water and traveled alone for the third. She asked students working in pairs to add further sentences about the situation, the table. Individual student read the sentences aloud from the table. So step 5, the teacher then asks students to imagine the dialogue when the police finally find Andy. She writes the following exchange on the board. So police, you should have taken a map, and Andy, I know I should. I didn't. I know I should. I didn't think. So student working in pairs continue writing the dialogue alongside the same lines and then practice it aloud. So taking it turns it to be the police officer and Andy. So from this example, we can get a short lesson of how the teacher have used situational context. So he created a imaginary situation and then let the students uh, make their own dialogue based on the situation and then based on the position of someone like Andy and the police. So and that's all for today's video, and thank you.